Few names in rock history evoke as much reverence as Robert Plant. Known as the Golden God for his commanding stage presence and soaring vocals, Plant wasn't just the frontman of Led Zeppelin, he was the embodiment of their mystique. Together with Jimmy Page, John Paul Jones, and John Bonham, Plant helped create music that transcended genres, fusing blues, folk, and hard rock into something entirely new. Yet despite their towering success, Led Zeppelin's story ended abruptly in 1980. For Plant, the downfall of Zeppelin wasn't just a band breaking apart, it was the shattering of a brotherhood, a dream, and even his own sense of self. In countless interviews over the decades, Robert Plant has revisited the rise and fall of Led Zeppelin, offering insights into what really happened when one of the world's greatest rock bands unraveled. His words reveal a man torn between nostalgia and forward momentum, haunted by tragedy but unwilling to live in the past. To understand the downfall of Led Zeppelin, we must look at it through Robert Plant's eyes, the triumphs, the fractures, and the crushing loss that made their end inevitable. Led Zeppelin formed in 1968, quickly earning a reputation as a powerhouse live act. Their self-titled debut album in 1969, with its thunderous riffs and raw energy, announced the arrival of something revolutionary. Within a few short years, Zeppelin became the biggest band in the world, filling arenas and stadiums across the globe. Robert Plant, with his golden curls, mystical lyrics, and banshee wail, was at the center of it all. For Plant, the early years were exhilarating, a whirlwind of music, travel, and discovery. He often recalls the camaraderie of those days, when Zeppelin was a tight-knit unit driven by passion and hunger. But with fame came excess. The band's tours became notorious for their wild parties, substance use, and occasional brush with the law. Plant, however, was never fully comfortable with the rock star excess. In later interviews, he would admit that he often felt like an outsider within his own band when the indulgence went too far. For him, the music always came first, while the chaos surrounding Zeppelin threatened to derail their artistry. By the mid-1970s, the cracks in Led Zeppelin were beginning to show. Their 1973 album, Houses of the Holy, and the double LP Physical Graffiti cemented their legacy. But behind the scenes, the pressures of fame and constant touring were taking a toll. Plant suffered a devastating blow in 1975 when he and his family were involved in a serious car accident while vacationing in Rhodes, Greece. Plant's wife, Maureen, was severely injured, and Robert himself broke an ankle, leaving him wheelchair-bound for months. He later described that period as one of despair, both physically and emotionally. Zeppelin's momentum was forced to pause, and Plant began questioning whether the relentless pace of the band was worth the personal cost. To make matters worse, Plant's son Karak died suddenly in 1977 at the age of 5 from a stomach infection. For Robert, it was a life-shattering tragedy. Touring became unbearable, and he struggled to find meaning in music amidst such profound grief. He has often said that he came close to quitting music altogether, feeling that the Zeppelin machine was incompatible with his need to heal. If Plant was the voice of Led Zeppelin, John Bonham was its beating heart. His drumming was thunderous yet precise, a force of nature that defined the band's sound. Plant and Bonham shared a particularly close bond, both hailing from the English Midlands and maintaining a deep friendship beyond the stage. Plant has often reflected on Bonham's importance, not just musically but personally. Bonham was the one who grounded him, who could share in the pressures of fame without pretense. Yet Bonham also struggled with the darker side of success. His heavy drinking, though often dismissed as part of the rock lifestyle, increasingly became a problem by the late 1970s. Plant would later admit that he saw the signs of Bonham's decline but felt powerless to stop it. In interviews, he described a sense of helplessness, watching his friend battle inner demons while the band pushed forward as if nothing was wrong. It was a dangerous cocktail: pressure, fame, exhaustion, and substance abuse. By 1980, Led Zeppelin was preparing to reclaim their dominance after a few turbulent years. Their 1979 Knebworth concerts had drawn massive crowds, proving that demand for the band was still insatiable. Plans were set for a North American tour that fall. But the tour never happened. On September 25, 1980, John Bonham was found dead after a night of heavy drinking. He had reportedly consumed over 40 measures of vodka, and his body gave out. The news shattered the band, and Robert Plant was inconsolable. Losing Bonham was not just losing a drummer, it was losing a brother. Plant has described that day as the end of everything. In his own words, the band didn't exist without Bonzo. Unlike many groups who soldier on after losing members, Zeppelin made the immediate and unanimous decision to disband. In December 1980, they released a simple statement: "We wish it to be known that the loss of our DHS, our friend, and the deep sense of undivided harmony felt by ourselves and our manager have led us to decide that we could not continue as we were." For Plant, there was no question. Zeppelin could not and should not exist without Bonham. The aftermath of Zeppelin's breakup was a dark period for Plant. He retreated from the public eye, unsure of his place in the world. He admitted in later years that he considered abandoning music altogether, perhaps becoming a teacher or simply stepping out of the spotlight. Yet music in time became a form of healing. Plant began working on solo material and in 1982 released Pictures at 11, his debut solo album. Though it was well received, Plant always struggled with the shadow of Zeppelin looming over him. Fans and critics constantly compared his new work to his old band, but Plant resisted nostalgia. He made a conscious effort to carve out his own identity, embracing different sounds, world music, folk, and even synth-driven rock in the 1980s. In interviews, he often said that looking back at Zeppelin with longing would have been destructive. Instead, he wanted to move forward, even if it meant disappointing fans who dreamed of a reunion. Over the years, Led Zeppelin reunions have been rare but monumental. Live Aid in 1985, the Atlantic Records' 40th anniversary concert in 1988, and most famously, the 2007 O2 Arena show in London with Jason Bonham on drums. That concert, immortalized in the film Celebration Day, was hailed as a triumphant return. Yet Robert Plant has consistently resisted calls for a full reunion. While Jimmy Page has expressed interest in reviving Zeppelin, Plant has remained firm that the band belongs to the past. He believes that attempting to recreate what they once had would diminish its legacy. In one interview he said, "You can't ever go back. It was of its time, and that time has gone." For Plant, Zeppelin's downfall was sealed with Bonham's death. Anything afterward would have been a hollow imitation. His refusal to reunite is not out of bitterness, but out of respect for Bonham, for the band's history, and for the integrity of their music. Looking back, Plant's reflections on Zeppelin's demise reveal deeper truths about fame, friendship, and loss. The band's downfall was not caused by a single event, but a culmination of pressures, personal tragedies, excess, and ultimately the death of an irreplaceable member. Plant has often suggested that Zeppelin was too powerful, too intense, to last forever. The very elements that made them great, Bonham's ferocity, Page's ambition, Plant's intensity, also carried seeds of destruction. In his view, Zeppelin burned too brightly to endure. But instead of mourning what was lost, Plant sees it as a chapter of his life that shaped who he became. His solo career, his collaborations with artists like Alison Krauss, and his exploration of new musical landscapes are all testaments to his resilience. The downfall of Led Zeppelin was, in many ways, inevitable. Bands of such magnitude rarely survive the weight of their own success, and tragedy often cuts them short. For Robert Plant, the end of Zeppelin was the end of his youth, his brotherhood, and a dream that defined an era. Yet, paradoxically, Zeppelin's downfall also preserved their legacy. By ending when they did, they avoided the slow decline that has tarnished so many legendary acts. Their catalog remains untouchable, their mystique intact. Through Robert Plant's reflections, we see a man who refuses to live in the past, even when the past was glorious. He acknowledges the pain, the loss, and the mistakes, but he carries them with humility. Zeppelin may have fallen, but in Plant's voice, in every retelling of their story, they remain eternal.